All right, we're the final day of budget hearings. Today, Board of Selectmen meeting February 28, 2024. Quick announcement, Monday, March 4th, 2024. This Monday, we're going to have the budget deliberations and vote at 4 p.m. I would like Mr. Jarzenbeck to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay.
Practice divine no-nos week.
Okay, first on the agenda today is the library, Main and Woods. Scott?
Is there a particular place to sit?
Right there. And you have to speak, I think it.
Make sure Brenda gets hers first this year.
Thank you.
We created this a couple of years ago. I thought it was really
Such a
smart.
great
and
idea.
I thought that the with all our scale.
Very
See that one better.
What page is it?
203. And there's actually, I think it's maybe the same copy, but the bookmark is on the budget request page.
So 203, yep, Main and Woods Library. Scott?
So really the explanation for the increase in the majority of the budget lines are minimal increases to reflect inflation and also meeting higher demand. So things like programming and the purchasing of books. You realize books have become more expensive, ebooks in particular, which is now 25% of our circulation. The pricing for leasing of those has becoming very high, and there are, the best way to explain it is it's a lease, it's not a purchase. And as they've become more popular, the publishers and distributors have really kind of shrunk the leases. It's a very arbitrary changes. As in when we lease an ebook for our collection, we are either often it is either 16 to 18 loans or 2 years. So any ebook that we're paying for in a lease, that book at some point disappears. It does not stay in our collection. As that part of our circulation grows, as that format in our circulation grows, that expense grows. It's a physical book costs us anywhere from $15 to $16 and then after processing, it's about $20 to $22 for us to put it on the shelf. But then it lives on the shelf until either its popularity goes away or it physically falls apart. Whereas an ebook, that is not the scenario. So ebooks are costing us more and more. They're becoming more and more a part of our collection. And then simultaneously, our circulation for physical books is almost where it was pre-COVID. So physical circulation hasn't gone away, but e-circulation has increased significantly. And really, the majority of the cost, this is really to cover inflation. It's the same with programming. While our talented staff do a significant part of our programming, we do often hire people from outside to come in and do programs. They're costing a little bit more because the cost of, the cost of doing business is just more. And then simultaneously, our supplies are costing more. Another increased cost is just kind of our custodial supplies. We are at this point seeing a significant increase in the amount of people coming in the door, but they're not only coming in the door, it's not transactional. It's not kind of the traditional library service of John comes in the door, he borrows a book, he takes a book off the shelf, he brings it to the circulation desk, it gets checked out. The majority of our stays are actually around an hour. When you walk in our library, especially probably from about 5 o'clock on, what you see are people coming in the door using that space as a third space. It's either a community space because they're older, they need to get out of the house, they want to socialize and see other people. They're coming in the door because they're students studying for the SATs or their midterms or just studying in general. Or it could also be members of our business community. There are a lot of people who are still doing work from home and doing mixed work from home, work from office. They're often coming to our library. So when they're there, they're spending an hour to 2 hours. That means they're using our bathroom, means we're leaving, we're leaving the lights on. We need to make sure the heat's on. There's more wear and tear on our carpets. We do allow people to come in with covered drinks. And also coming out of COVID, we're still pretty stringent about our cleaning methods that we learned during the pandemic. So those supplies are being used more and more. So again, this is really, the operation side, it's really just an increase in the cost of doing business. And we could reduce hours, we could reduce cleaning, we could have dirtier bathrooms. I really don't think Plan B is an option. And, the majority of complaints I hear about our services, really come down to those small things, and we try our best to really fulfill the expectations that the citizens of Fairfield have for our library.
You're going to talk about, so you're going to talk about your increased headcount. Yeah.
So this is our second year that we are asking for a full-time teen services librarian or paraprofessional. This position is needed. When libraries about 15, 20 years ago started serving teens, Fairfield was kind of ahead of the curve. What we saw was large usage at our Fairfield Woods branch and some usage at our main library. But the majority of our focus was at our Fairfield Woods branch. We were very, very lucky, how many years ago? To have the full-time teen services librarian, 5 years ago. How long has Jen been with us?
Well, we had a full-time librarian when the renovation was complete at Maine.
So we've been lucky enough to have one full-time teen librarian for a significant amount of time. And because of the way the usage was, they could dedicate a lot of time to the branch and still be at the main library when doing programming when necessary. What we have noticed coming out of the pandemic is a significant uptick in teen usage at the main library. A beautiful teen room. The students have just discovered us. As one parent explained to me that I know through something else, he goes, my kid used to go to Fairfield, she's a high school student, my teen used to go to Fairfield University, then they discovered the library. They discovered that the library was in walking distance of the school, closer to home, closer to a wonderful, downtown with a lot more amenities. So she has begun to use the main library on a regular basis, and that's what we've been seeing. So we have our teens that use our study room, we have our teens who go to our programs, and our full-time teen services librarian was able to handle that and still concentrate on Woods with part-time staff. But over the last 2 years, it's really become difficult to have that one person really concentrate on both locations in a full-time capacity. We have used part-timers, but part-time staff specifically around teens, they're going to get picked up by other libraries as soon as there is a full-time position. So there's a lot of turnover in staffing who serve that population. Simultaneously, we have seen usage at the Woods branch increase when it comes to evening and weekends. So this full-time teen services staff member would not only help with teen services, help teen services stay at the level that it's at, but also would be someone we could add to that rotation of weekends and weeknights, which I think would really help alleviate, again, the reliance on part-time staff that are harder to get to work in the evenings, harder to get to work on the weekends, and also having somebody with that training and that dedication to serving teens there on the weekends and there in the evenings will help with behavior issues, because that's one way this will help the full library community. About a third of our incident reports are from teens. Nothing bad, throwing pop snaps on the ground when no one's looking, maybe being a few corners of the library they're not supposed to, or in the bathroom together when they're not supposed to be. Or on a scooter. This really helps benefit the staff and the patrons by having someone else there to really concentrate on teen behavior and doing it in a positive way by being engaged and speaking with the teens and kind of teaching them about the environment of the library and doing programming so they're busy. They don't want to be in the bathroom together or on that scooter because they're busy doing maker programming or doing college prep.
Can you talk a little bit about maker program?
Sure, so we have had a maker space for some time now. However, we really haven't been able to do much programming around it or do open labs with it just because we don't have the staff and the trained staff to do it. So we do see this position helping in a way that maybe we can concentrate some hours in making that, doing more maker programming and having maker lab hours. And the maker lab does everything from 3D printing, so the technology side of things. It helps people come in and maybe they want to make a Warhammer figure for their gaming. Or maybe they want to make something, a thing for their car, or there's tons of things you can do with our 3D printing, but also sewing. Some of our biggest maker programming is actually around sewing and using sewing machines and repairing, and that's a really great social program. Maker programs are teaching skills, but they're also creating socialization. And then as kind of a counterpart to our Maker Lab, we are slowly easing into having a library of things. About a third of the libraries in the state have a library of things, which could include paddle boards. What is the game everybody loves? Pickleball boards. Sorry, thank you.
You're too young to know it.
Not my sport.
You'd be surprised.
So, everything, things that could be used in rec programs, things like heart monitors. So we've worked with the health department, and we've actually gotten blood pressure monitors. None of this is outside the realm of normal for public libraries. We're just a little behind in that. So slowly kind of opening up that service as well.
I actually don't know do you think the public knows about the makerspace? Should we be promoting that?
No,
Yeah.
once we're comfortable with the level of programming that we're doing there,
Yeah.
we can do an open lab and really feel like, we like to pilot things, get them up to the level of quality that we know that the public expects from us, and then we will go full bore with getting people excited about it and promoting it. But right now, it's a program that we've been slowly getting off the ground, and I do believe this position will help us, give us some staff time to really ramp that up so that it looks like what other libraries in the state are doing.
Do you mind if I ask a couple more questions? The library fines,
Yes.
this is the reduction is a philosophy? Yeah.
So, and I'll be open and honest, when I was at my previous library, we went completely fine-free as a part of a fine-free movement. This does not mean that people are free to not return items. They are still charged for returning items. But what the library community discovered probably over the last 10 years, and I believe about a third of the libraries in the state of Connecticut are fine-free, is that items are actually returned more if there is not a late fee. The majority of our fines are accompanied by parents and children. And often they're embarrassed to bring those items back to the library. And we see a relatively low return rate when fines get beyond a certain threshold, specifically for children. It happens in two ways. A child with a fine doesn't come back to the library because they're embarrassed, or they don't have the money to pay the fine, or when they realize they have a fine, they're at the desk and now they're embarrassed and they're just not going to come back. Another way that this stops individuals from borrowing is the fact that parents say, yes, I don't let my children borrow books because I'm so tired of paying fines. The majority of the people in this community can pay their fines and are comfortable, but it's an equity issue because there are individuals who live in the town who have children who cannot pay those fines, or the choice of those fines or being able to spend their money on gas or other things, they're going to make that decision to do that. From another perspective, it's a double tax. Individuals already pay their taxes to be able to borrow material, and now this is a double tax on them.
I think I recall you saying that you don't see an improvement in return rates with fines. So.
You don't. And libraries who have gone fine-free have seen an improvement in return rates. So for this year, what we're doing is we're piloting, currently we're about to start piloting one program. And then our goal, if we see that as being successful, then we will pilot another component. And we're following a model that I've done and other libraries have done. The first is automatic renewals for non-high demand material. So not the 7-day books, not the 14-day books, but if you borrow something from our shelf in the back, there's an automatic renewal, so you at least get another few weeks with that item. This helps the library because then we're no longer shelving that material, and it gives us actually more room on the shelves, so we're weeding less material. So that'll be the first phase that we're going to test out. The second phase will be going fine-free for children's books. And that's really my goal for right now, is for low-demand children's books that aren't new, not kits or puzzles. Those items will be hopefully fine-free if the board is supportive, if the public is supportive.
So the reduction of 18,000 is phase one?
It's phase one and phase two
Okay.
built into it. The other thing to keep in mind is while we're pleasantly surprised with that line and how well that line has been doing, the majority of our money collected from fines was from DVDs. And DVDs are no longer being borrowed. And I would probably give DVDs another, and I know I'm gonna be asked this at another board, we're probably looking at about 5 to 10 years before we phase out DVDs, but we are slowly phasing them out. And it's with the idea of libraries always phase technology out slowly. We like to get the new technology, like the things that are in the makerspace, to introduce people to them, but we also tend to be really the last organization in the community that makes outdated and antiquated technology still available to the individuals who need it. Perfect example of that is we still have a fax machine. I don't like the fax machine. I don't understand why we still need one, but we do. And it's a high used service in the library. I tried to get rid of a fax machine at a previous library I worked at, and I thought I was gonna get run out of town with pitchforks. A typewriter, we had a typewriter up until a few years ago. So that antiquated technology we like to hold on to because we still have individuals who need to use it. And we tend to be really the last community outlet that has it. So DVDs will be around for a while, but as you've seen, we're slowly phasing out the budgetary portion of that in our code.
Anecdotally, I would say, like, from what I know, high users tend to they're stickier with the older technology, like the people I know that use the library a lot some of them were disappointed not to have all the videos there. So, DVDs are still a big.
I'm saying 5 to 10 years.
Any question? There's one obvious question was, I can't recall the reduction in fees and professional services of 157 to.
Well, what was really great in the last few budget processes with Frank is Frank has helped us, when I looked at our budget when I came on, I thought that was a strange budget line because it caught so many things that normally we would separate out in other libraries I've been at. So Frank did a really, really great job.
Just a reclass. Right?
Of just kind of reclassifying things, which helped us with spending and helped us project spending and where we needed to put our money.
Any questions?
No real questions, but I'm supportive of adding the teen librarian. I think that more opportunities that we provide for our kids to be active and engaged in other activities, the better. Spent so many hours in the library with my young children. I will admit that I check out ebooks, that is me, but my son was at a program a couple weeks ago and just had the time just to peruse the library and the library of things. That was new to me, and it really, I encourage people just to go and take a walk through the library. Memory care kits, what a wonderful idea for residents who are caregivers to have that readily available through our library. Jigsaw puzzles, board games. So kudos to you for just seeing a need and meeting in our community.
Just actually read an article someone forwarded to me about how libraries have just become like the hub of everything, which you just outlined in your statement, that people are using it so much more than ever. I'm sort of and I know we're a place where people who are homeless or somewhere to be, and the complications and the amount of stress that's put on that wasn't really something that was put on library staff in the past. You've done a great job.
I'm going to put you on the spot and need you and your staff's advisory, whatever, capabilities because you're sort of at the forefront of diversity, equity, inclusion, and as we assemble our permanent commission, we're going to have to rely on, your advice as we go forward with that. And hopefully some people or yourself or people on your staff will be able to carve out time to help us out.
We would love that.
Scott is also at Fairfield Cares Coalition, really a key member of that group, just in terms of helping us with data collection and providing his viewpoints of working so closely with our teens on a daily basis. So thank you for your service to our community through the many organizations you touch. And I would also like to give a shout out to the Friends of the Library also, who, through their fundraising efforts, also just raise awareness and provide additional support. So, thank you.
Scott's also a biker and complete streets advocate, an activity advocate. So you better live here because your demands on your time increasing. All right, thank you. Any other questions?
Might have to up the salaries.
We did look at houses when we
You did look at what?
We did look at houses when we moved.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're-
And my son does bring up.
All right, no comment on the prices.
My son does bring up every time we visit, he loves to come to work with me, and he's always like, Dad, why?
How old is he?
He is 14, and he's
Yeah.
been, last year's, every time he comes with me, he's like, no.
Yeah. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Anthony Calabrese, Penfield Pavilion Complex.
It's 214.
I'm Anthony Calabrese, Director of Parks and Recreation, and good morning to you guys. I know this has been a long week for you. Hate going on day 3, but try not to drag this out with 7 budgets. So we'll start with Penfield Pavilion Complex, and I'll just talk about revenue first, and then we'll go into the expenses if that's okay with you guys. So that's page 215 in your budget book. What we planned for here is for the Penfield Pavilion to be open as of January, February of 25, which is the latest information that I've received, so that's what we're planning on. So we are taking reservations for the next 2 years at that building. So we anticipate, with these numbers, approximately 46 reservations for the Penfield Pavilion between February 1st and June 30th of 25. The other 150 parties that we build in there are for our Jackie Durrell Pavilion, which is built into these revenue numbers as well, as you'll see. So that's really where the increase is. The large increase percentage-wise shows up in Penfield 1 because it was closed and then it was reopened. And again, we tried to budget for a partial year, and that's where we are. So really, these numbers aren't crazy. It's half a year of a concession. It's, like I said, 146 parties between the 2 buildings itself, and then seasonal locker rentals, which is 25,000. As you can see with the actuals is probably the 3-year average. Though it's not listed on here, I believe that's approximately what it is. So.
Well, first of all, they've started taking down the construction or deconstruction to get ready for construction started, and the decks are coming down and all that. But on the lockers, what is that 100% rented?
No, and they haven't been since 2017. We had 194 lockers there. I believe we're down to about 175 due to, we had a lack of storage space at the facility itself after it was rebuilt. So we condensed some of those lockers into storage space for the facility rentals and things of that nature. So we're down to 175, and I believe we rent approximately about 125 of them each season. So, whatever that is, 75%, 80% full.
It used to be there were waiting lists for the lockers.
There were.
Yeah.
There were, and it just, I'm not.
Going to summer camps and.
Oh, people definitely go into summer camps, but I'm not sure if people really see the use of storing beach chairs and stuff. Not like it was,
When I moved here,
That's what it was.
There's really good beach carts now with the,
oh, is that it?
technology, a little bit.
Definitely could be part
Be
of it.
important. You
Yeah.
know, I know it sounds simplistic, but
No, makes sense. Yeah, because that was the whole, like, people
Yeah.
were fighting for lockers.
When I was on the Park and Rec Commission, when
Oh, we
it
used,
was literally, the room was filled.
and
As a Board of Education member, I had to be on it, and the room was filled with people saying that they were considering reducing the locker space. And they were like apoplectic about their locker, Fairfield residents. Actually, Board of Finance member John Matola was one of them. He was like, they were adamant about their locker, and
Right.
I just always thought it was, because I grew up here, I mean, we just brought our own things to the beach. We never, I mean, I can understand elderly people who can't drag things back and forth, so would
Yeah.
like to have that opportunity to have their chair there, and you just get it. But it's changed dramatically, the need, anyway.
we used to have the 4 bungalows there as well. That might be before you moved to town.
I don't remember
We
them.
had 4 bungalows, and again, they were
Those were
waiting lists for like 100 years.
Those were cool.
Once you had it, you had it.
It was yours.
That was it. It was like a little cottage, like a little bungalow, and you'd spend the whole summer there. It was interesting.
Yeah.
We don't have them anymore, though.
Yeah.
do you think that, people maybe are just not beach loyal, that more people are going to Sasko or Jennings, and maybe if there were, do you think that if there were lockers at other beaches, you would just have an
No.
increased?
No, I don't think that's the case. I think it's more of the day trippers. We recently did a demonstration. I was looking into purchasing a software that basically tracks all the users. You can geofence different pieces of property, and it tells you essentially how many people are using your property. And we fenced off 2 properties during the demo, and one of them was Jennings Beach. And it showed that over 500,000 people use Jennings Beach annually, which is great. I mean, that's a huge number. But it also showed the length of stay. And the average stays, it was twofold. The largest percentage was either 15 minutes, so people were literally driving in, maybe
For a little walk?
a little walk, getting back in their
Down the
car
pier and
and
going-
leaving, or you were there all day. And there really was nothing in between. It was, you either stayed 15 minutes or you stayed all day, which, again, pretty useful information. The way we would use that software in the future, is for staffing. How many parking attendants do we need to have on? Maybe I don't need to have 3 parking attendants on at 10 a.m. when the bulk of the people are coming between 12 and 2. So anyway, that was where we were looking, but my point is, you've got this wide range of people that are either coming for a short duration or for the duration of the day. And really, I think it's the duration of the day people that use the lockers primarily. And then they don't live close to the beach.
And so are you gonna buy that software?
We are still working on that part. I'd like to, but I was waiting on purchasing, and
Okay,
so it's sitting over there still.
okay. Was that in the budget?
We were gonna take it out of our revolving account, but
Okay. Yeah, that would be cool. It would be really useful for using
economic
for SantaCon.
development, SantaCon, we landed on town hall, so we know that we had.
So we were 500 people, 10,000 people.
5,000 people, we did run it, so we know it was 5,000, which is great. And again, that's useful information.
Yeah.
So,
But also useful for your plan, for your Parks and Rec master plan and how to use the parking lot.
Exactly.
You're thinking of some other uses for that.
Yep, exactly. Any other questions on the revenue for Penfield?
I have a question, just it's somewhat related but not. We recently appointed a member to the Disabilities Commission, talking about just making our beaches more accessible to those with disabilities. We're talking about a wheelchair that can go into the water.
We have them.
And I wasn't sure if we had them or not, so I said, next time I see Anthony, I'm going to ask that question, so.
Yeah, we have Penfield, Jennings, Lake Mohegan are the 3 we have currently. I believe we were adding 2 more that were budgeted for the current budget that we're in, that'll be added to Sasko and I think Southport. So yeah.
We're happy to get that on the record.
And we have Moby Mat ramps, which are fully
Yes.
accessible. We have those at Jennings and we have one at Penfield. And again, we'd like to replace eventually the ramps that we have at Penfield to permanent cement ramps like we have at Sasko and Southport. to be more ADA compliant. Okay, I'll move into expenses for Penfield. As you can see, this stays relatively flat. Part-time seasonal payroll is obviously increasing because we are opening that building back up, and we're anticipating having 46 parties that we may not have had last year. And these also go up due to the rise in minimum wage. You'll see that across all my budgets, and as I'm sure other departments have been saying the same. Happy to answer any questions. Okay, if there's none, I'll move on to recreation.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, recreation, revenue for recreation is on page 221. And you'll see we've got overall about an 18% increase here. Big driver in this one is recreation programs. Obviously, we are still coming out of COVID. I know it's so weird to say that 3 years later, but people are coming back in droves to our programs, as we see with our summer camps and our sports leagues, which is great. Our swim lessons, you'll see, have been a huge hit over the last year or two. So those are the key drivers here. The tennis concession, that's a fixed lease through 2034, so those numbers will just keep going up, which is nice for us. Field rentals, we did just raise the rate, but when you raise rates to certain things, it scares certain groups away, so we held that line flat at the $265,000. And then Burr Mansion is captured in here as well. And again, this is our best projection. We do take reservations there 2 years in advance, but we are looking at bringing in just about $100,000 in revenue there, not net profit, but revenue. Happy to answer any questions. All right.
Just one
I
second.
have a question about the Burr. For events there, is it always with the tent? Are there any smaller tents that people just use the building? What is the dynamic for?
Yeah, so we do lease that tent. So the tent is what we set up for the building.
Okay.
I'm not gonna say 100%, 99% of our events that take place are in the tent, with people using the interior of the building for maybe a small cocktail reception, bridal suites, things of that nature. It's very rare that we get a meeting or like a business meeting or somebody says, hey, I just have 30 people and I'd like to rent that. That does not normally happen. So it is larger events that are under the tent.
And was there ever any discussion about making the tent a more permanent structure? And just knowing some of the concerns about noise, and over this, we've had discussions about the lack of space in this building. I don't know if you could do a walkway from here to a potential space that you could use during the day for town, thinking outside the box here.
Yeah, no.
During the meeting for conferences and reclaim some conference room space here.
Yeah. So yes, there was a master plan done for the entire Burr property and the town hall property that included building a very substantial addition onto that building. Millions of dollars to add on to it. And I think over the years, different administrations have looked at it and said, we're just not sure that we're going to see the ROI, the return on investment that we think we could get. And that's kind of where it's sat on the shelf, really. But it has been explored. It's definitely been discussed.
There's some numbers that are old, I guess, at this point.
Exactly. So they've probably tripled
So
since.
I can follow up with the first selectman if I want more information on that, of what was done in the past.
Like Jaylee was really leading the charge back when I was a state representative. Got a lot of grant money to fix the place up. Found threw in some money to help. That's why it's been, fixed up inside. But one of his goals was to add a, what do you call it again? Solarium?
It was
Solarium.
Solarium,
To kind of
yeah.
To the back for
Instead of a
year
tent.
round and all that stuff. And
Beautiful
it
design.
was it was beautiful, but it's very expensive and
The historic district
Historic
was
district.
all in favor of it, right? That-
Yeah, well,
I don't even know what they would think about it.
No, they would
But
not.
he wanted to put, his whole plan for this whole campus was really interesting. But some of it included putting access from the old post road along the Burr Mansion like where that little gazebo is on the side here,
Huh?
because of, the traffic pattern, which I actually thought was a good idea, because you have a lot of bottleneck where that school is, and it's kind of dangerous, really. But that's a lot of money.
We'll go into expenses.
I just wanted to ask a question. Can you put a plug in for the swim lessons? Because I'm not sure I know where, when, how.
So the Parks and Recreation Department offers swim lessons at Jennings Beach and at Lake Mohegan. They start as young as, really, I believe it's 4 years old, and go up. There, you could do a private lesson for adults. It is primarily the lessons that are organized are for youth, but again, like I said, we do offer private lessons for adults. I believe they're $50, but I might even be high on that because we try to keep swim lessons as affordable as possible. We do offer scholarships for all the Parks and Recreation programs for children that are families that receive free and reduced lunch. So again, we want as many people to learn to swim as possible. It is a safety issue, and being a coastal community, that's a priority of ours. So we take a lot of pride in what we do on our waterfronts, including our swim lessons.
Do we offer those to residents of, let's say, Bridgeport as well, or would that just be?
We do.
Residents? Yeah.
We do, but non-resident cannot register for our programs until a week prior to the start date, if there's room available. And there is an additional fee, but.
But also scholarship.
Yes, exactly. And like I said, we try to prioritize all our programs for residents because those are our taxpayers.
All right, expenses.
Yeah, expenses, as you'll see, for the most part, this is primarily flat budget. The key driver here is regular payroll, which most of my employees on the recreation side of things are in the THEA and PETA contracts, and since those were recently settled, retro pay, so a lot of that you see here. The other driver is the fees and professional services. Here you'll see a $12,000 increase, and that is due to our firework bid and the cost of marine services. Getting the barge is one of the most expensive parts to that. Happy to answer any questions.
Straightforward. Any questions? All right.
I'll move on to waterfront revenue, which is page 225 in your budget book. Here we held pretty much flat for beach stickers, for daily parking, and beach concession. And this is just really due to the fact that we didn't raise our rates. So we have a very good idea of how many beach stickers we sell each year. We have a good idea, as long as the weather cooperates, on what we do for daily parking. And then the beach concession is, it goes out to bid. It did just recently go out to bid, so this number should be ballpark, within a 1,000 or two, I would just say. But yeah, so we're still finalizing that bid, but again, you can see these are the revenue numbers for the waterfront.
When was the last time we raised rates on beach stickers?
I believe it was 2018, 2019 for residents. And then non-residents we raised, I think coming out of COVID, so 21.
And that was totally not controversial.
Oh, of course.
I remember watching that.
There's always there's always bills in the House making towns not charge more. Give free access. Want the beach.
So I try to do my best. As I know Brenda knows, I know I've mentioned this to Bill. I do my best to try to watch what Hartford's doing and have a good idea of when bills are coming up. And again, over the last several years, they have tried to push a beach access bill for free access for inland communities, which obviously, if those ever do gain traction and pass, it would have a budget impact on us. So I haven't heard any rumors, since it's a short session this year, that they're going to try to push anything. But again, we've got lobbyists in our state association that keep me apprised of this regularly. So keep my eyes open for it.
And I was even thinking more for residents, my husband every year, it's the best bargain in town, this beach sticker.
Yeah. It is.
You know, a benefit to our residents, so.
Well, I mean, obviously, you know, when you live in a shoreline community, you pay extra for
Oh,
the
it's
cost of
it's
living
a
here.
benefit of,
And your taxes are higher and your housing prices are higher because you choose to live in a shoreline community. But Anthony's been really good about watching bills on all kinds of things that impact our town, because that would have a huge financial impact that the Fairfield taxpayers would end up having to pick up. You know, we're talking extra lifeguards, extra.
I just really, for my own, when the last time the rates changed, not proposing any sort of change to either.
And everyone has access, it's parking access, so
That's the key.
that's the key. So, you know, you could get public transportation, you can Uber, you can walk.
Ride a bike.
Right, but what I've come to understand better over the last 3 months is the cleanup issues, and it's substantial, and, yeah, so.
All right, so no other questions on the revenue. I'll move into waterfront expenses on 226. Again, you'll see the primary driver here is the minimum wage increase, so you'll have a bump in the seasonal payroll. And then printing and binding, this is where the physical beach sticker itself, that cost is, and that went out to bid, and it came in obviously $6,500 higher, so that is the increase for our waterfront budget. Happy to answer any questions.
You should raise rates to cover that. Just joking. Questions? Okay.
All right. Moving on to parks. There's no revenue on parks. So this is just expense, so sorry. Nothing to help lessen the blow on this one. Parks, these guys, they do all our maintenance on all the fields, athletic facilities, town buildings, complexes, you know, town hall, islands, the town islands, the green spaces around town that are not conservation areas. That's where these guys are working. So a decrease in regular payroll, and that's really just due to the churn and turnover with guys taking new positions, whether they were within parks or within the DPW in general, and then entry-level guys backfilling those positions. So that's why you see a decrease there. Other than that, the main driver to this one is the capital outlay line, which goes up from 40,000 to 117, but the 117, again, these are for 2 trucks that we're trying to replace. We have a 2500 Chevy pickup that needs to be replaced. It's a 2007, and then we have a 2003 3500 Chevy Mason dump truck that needs to be replaced. Both are high in mileage, cost us a lot in maintenance, and again, are the 2 priorities of our fleet that need to be updated. The goal with our fleet would be to replace a vehicle or 2 every year, so you'll see us slowly start replacing this over budget cycles. The other increase here is contracted property services. Again, these are our outside contractors that do some work on our athletic fields, irrigation, and some mowing for us around town. And again, that's a contractual increase to 3%, so you see that across the board. Happy to answer any questions.
I'm sorry, did you mention the maintenance increase?
Yep, again, the maintenance increase is for building and grounds is primarily for work that pops up around town. We've been replacing a lot of fences lately, whether trees come down on them or the fence is 30 years old or a car runs into them or a plow hits them. We have been replacing a lot of fences. I had one fence in the East Cemetery, as we also oversee the cemeteries. The East Cemetery, the one right across from Subway on Post Road, the backside of that, for whatever reason, the neighborhood likes cutting that fence. So we actually had to replace it twice and put up signage, asking them, and we knocked on doors and we talked to neighbors saying, please don't cut the fence, but they like to they like to cut the fence and cut through. And that's to get to the post road, to walk. So that's what was happening. So luckily, the fence has been up for a few months and hasn't been cut since. So we're hoping, knock on wood, it stays that way. But it's things like that that pop up. Work on the Pentway behind Jackie Durrell Pavilion. It's a good example of buildings and grounds maintenance that needs to take place that maybe wasn't foreseen. But that's these items.
For the outside contractors, how long are the contracts for these?
We go year to year. It's a 5-year contract,
But you,
1 year at a time. So they're at 1-year renewals for 5 years. So a few years ago, we had put the bid out and it was very convoluted. The way like the billing was coming in and it just was very hard to track. So we ended the contract with the vendor and put it back out to bid, and we had several vendors bid on it, and the vendor that we had ended the contract with ended up winning the contract again, but in a much more streamlined way for us to check the billing and double check and make sure the right fees are being charged, the right properties are being mowed. So yeah, we did just renew them for the upcoming year.
so if something's not working out, you're not locked in for.
That's the nice part about doing it, the maintenance this way, 1 year at a time. And again, I've mentioned, and I think you guys have heard me say, I would like to do an analysis to bring some of this work back in-house. That would mean, hiring more full-time parks guys to take on that work and buying some more equipment. We had our internal auditor do an analysis in '21, and she showed that yes, this would make sense in certain areas, not all areas. And then we did an independent analysis on top of the internal audit, and our office also says, yeah, we think we can do that. But seeing what Frank put together for, I believe, the fire department and weighing, that analysis there was light years ahead of what we were doing internally. So I know it would probably be a good, Frank and I have talked, probably a good summer project for us to sit and look at, and then, maybe the next budget cycle, start implementing it if it makes sense. But again, I think you guys have heard me say that, but I like to put it on the record so when I do eventually come back and you guys are like, well, you've never said,
I appreciate you saying it because, they've been on, you haven't necessarily presented to me in an official capacity. So I appreciate you putting on the record here. You probably heard it as being on the RTM and, obviously Ms. Kupchak serving as former first selectman. So thank you.
Like facts and data, if the ROI is there, like it doesn't even have to be 100% financial, or it could be volatility of, and quality of service is incorporated in that. We should see that, and I'm looking forward to that. Definitely.
Yeah, and I should also put on record, we are happy with our vendor. They're doing.
No, I mean.
Right.
So I don't want them to watch this and be like, oh, you're trying to get rid of us. No, not the case.
But there's also an element of control, better control over the quality, consistency, right? As well as the products used,
100%.
like weed killer kind of stuff.
We are all organic. I should point that out because that does come up at the RTM every once in a while. All of the town properties that we oversee, we use only organics on them. And sometimes people don't understand when you use only organics, you might not have the Yankee stadiums. A good comparison is look at our golf courses. Our golf courses do use pesticides that we're allowed to use by law, but they're green all year and they're beautifully manicured. And it's a different animal than recreation from that aspect. But again, we use all organics, and our schools we have to.
Schools, right.
Schools,
right.
But
The other, so as we,
definitely getting better.
the sort of conversion to turf in some of the fields. Well, first of all, what's the status of that for the?
Ludlow.
Yeah, Roger Ludlow.
Roger Ludlow, we're hoping that we will be going out to bid, I want to say next month. It finally has gone through all the permits and approvals that it needed to. So we went, obviously we got the funding and that was all approved a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. But getting through conservation, inland, wetlands, planning and zoning, it just goes on and on. And it's just a long process. It's a very long and thorough process.
And the parents threw kind of a.
And yes, for
into
the
it.
Ludlow Middle School.
They wanted it reconfigured after.
For baseball.
For baseball,
Which was kind of a cool.
came after the fact.
Yeah, whatever was happening with that?
We were able to fit it in.
Oh, yeah?
We were able to fit it, we reconfigured some things, we were able to fit it in with the lights.
Will that be a game field?
No.
Oh, right, it's practice field.
They'll be able to use it for practice, maybe some sub-varsity stuff. The thing that they're going to have to realize, and I feel bad for the athletic director in a sense, is it just comes down to scheduling, right? So if you put a baseball team there to practice, you cannot use any of the other fields there because baseball is going to be hitting into them. So now you just lost whether you had lacrosse or soccer on the field, and it's where do you put those guys now that you've displaced them, and it's not going to be the Kiwanis baseball field. I can't slide soccer. I mean, I could. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but I just don't have another soccer field
Right.
to move whatever he displaces. So again, it'll be a conversation for
I think
the.
I think that he realizes that in some of these discussions, that there's benefits in one, but it also creates
Well, if,
challenges
you know,
for, yeah.
To that point though too, you get a day like today in March, this is typical March weather here. He could have the baseball team theoretically go play on that turf field. They could hold their tryouts, and that's a nice benefit where those other teams may not be going out there because it's nasty out. Again, not that baseball wants to be out there in the rain, but it gives them the flexibility to do that.
So when
So
is,
nobody's happy, which means that you're doing something
It
right.
seems about right.
I'm sorry.
I just carry around my yellow flag. Nobody's ever happy, so you know.
I'm sorry, Christine.
so when is the target completion date at this point, Anthony?
If it's about a 4 to 6 month project, so
Got
if we go out to bid, we start construction in May, I would assume that we would be able to finish it by November, is what I would think. So yeah, we would lose it for for the end of the spring, summer, and the fall, but we'd be able to open it up right in time for the spring season. And again, that's just been my experience with the past turf projects that we've had, is that they take 4 to 6 months. They always tell me 4 months, but it always takes 6. Again, it's just.
So we're losing the whole field for a season,
Yeah, but so, yes.
right?
Yes.
So that'll be interesting.
But what we've been doing over the last couple of years is we've been trying to take a field offline each season to rest. And that was one of the things that we had never been able to do in the past. But having lost Ludlow Middle School in 2017 due to damage from a lacrosse program that shouldn't have been playing on it over Thanksgiving week, and they trashed the field.
Right.
That field went down, so we actually lost that field, so we had to move things around in the spring. When that field came back on, we lost Holland Hill due to the building construction that they were doing there. So we were forced to be down a field. And when Holland Hill came back online, we were like, well, this is a perfect opportunity for us. We've been doing it with one field down anyway. Let's just start rotating a field in the mix so it can rest for a season. And that, I think, as Dave was mentioning before, is really starting to pay dividends for us, because you're starting to see fields in better condition because they're getting that time to rest. But again, we still have a field shortage, and the fields are still overused, heavily used, but it helps being able to do that. So when we start construction for Ludlow, what we'll do is that will be the field that obviously rests. So everything else will be back in circulation.
And the contract with outside field maintenance, will that adjust for the not having that huge field
Yeah, so yes, everything is
per field?
per field. I don't want to say it's like an a la carte menu, but essentially that's
Right.
what it is. So like we know how much what the breakout is for Ludlow Middle School. It's going to cost us, making this number off, 'cause I don't know it off the top of my head, $46,000 a year to maintain between mowings, linings, fertilizers, all of that. We would know that we're going to save that in the budget because we're not spending it, because they don't need to do that work on that field while it's under construction.
Awesome.
And just for the benefit of, just in conversations with the athletic directors, in my role on the Board of Ed, a wish list for a Fairfield Ward is another turf field once the turf field at Roger Ludlow is complete, just for equity between the two schools. So I would expect that to be coming before us in the next few years.
And another field at
Sooner.
Hoynes Hill.
That'd be nice too. The Parks and Rec Commission has asked me to look at putting a second softball field up at Hoydens Hill behind Doogie Yellow. I was waiting on the designs, just kind of an overview concept design from our vendor on that, but haven't gotten it yet.
And that's an equity issue as well, yeah, in many ways.
Well, I'm not going to go that route. I hear this argument made a lot, but there are 8 dedicated softball fields and there are 9 dedicated Little League fields. So for me, looking at an equity standpoint, I will make the argument every day that 9 and 8 are pretty equitable. Okay, not exactly even, and yes, one more field would make it 9 and 9, but it's just not one of those statements or arguments that I like to have with people because I guess there's a perception out there and I just don't agree with it.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I think that, between Parks and Rec and school fields and athletics at the high schools and, what team is getting what field and access is part of a larger discussion moving forward. Because we have we heard yesterday, we have a lot of students that are playing sports through our public schools, and there's only
For a while.
there's
I mean,
only
we added the-
there's only so much field space, and we
Yeah, I mean, we did the 4 million for the turf, to try to have more playtime, but we definitely need more fields.
Real, big picture, where Parks and Rec and conservation, like open space versus Parks and Rec, like at a place like Mohegan, part of it would be you, part of it is conservation, yeah.
Yeah, so, just like kind of the overview is Parks and Recreation oversees the parking lot, the main parking lot, not the Cascade parking lot, but the main parking lot and then the beach area, the swim area. Everything outside of that, the trails, the cascades, the rest of the 170 acres that's there is conservation and Tim. So.
Right, okay. All right, very good, thanks.
On to the marina. Marina revenues on page 232. Again, you see a budget holding steady here because we did not increase rates. We have not increased rates in a number of years. So we know how many slips we have. We have waiting lists on them. We know how many kayak racks we have. Again, we have waiting lists on them. So when they're all at capacity, these are the numbers, and it's just a matter of timing when we do our quarterly reports. We might show 584,000 instead of the 600. Again, we know we're going to get the 600. It's just a matter of when we collect that check and the people get their boats in the water. Happy to answer questions. The only thing that may change on this one is the gas dock concession, because that did go out to bid, and the state group for the blind, by state statute, gets first right of refusal on all municipal properties and their concessions.
Who does?
The state group for the blind, I believe it's called Blind Bureau for the Educational Blind Services. It's BEBS. So they exercise their right. Normally what we do is we send them information saying, hey, we're looking at putting the concession out to bid. They come, they do the pre-bid walk, and again, my 20 years here, the experience has been, thank you, but we don't have any vendor that would be able to do this, and they write us a letter saying that they pass on their first right of refusal. When we reached out to them this year for the gas dock, they came and looked at it and said, well, we have somebody in mind and they would be perfect for this. We'd like to exercise our right to take over the gas dock. So purchasing is just working with them right now. Again, they come in and they pay something similar in price. So I don't know that it's going to be exactly what our former tenant was paying, but it'll be in that range.
Does that include the store or?
It does.
Okay.
So they'll be able to do, they'll be able to sell, coffee, and it's a class 1 facility, so it's all prepackaged goods. They couldn't do, they can't make hamburgers and hot dogs or anything like that. But they provide the gas. He's got to get it at, obviously with this group it would be at the state, so they'll probably get the state price, which is great for them. But anyway, that's where we are with that. Lake Mohegan's a similar situation, though we passed the waterfront one, where they didn't exercise their right and we couldn't get a vendor at the lake. So the Group for the Blind ended up putting in vending machines as a substitute for having a vendor there, which works out for everybody, really. It works out for them because it's a revenue share. So we get some of the revenue, they get some of the revenue, and it also provides a convenience, sometimes to the dismay of some parents, but we look at it as it's better than having nothing there.
I actually didn't realize we didn't have a vendor there anymore.
We haven't had a vendor there last summer was the first summer we hadn't had a vendor there.
Okay.
The year before, he didn't make it halfway through the season. It's
just not high traffic.
It's just not a high traffic place.
Yeah.
We average about 45 to 50 people visits a day at the beach front. Yeah, so unless we push, so what we tried doing with our vendors is we would try to put additional events up there, whether they were movie nights or
Yeah.
things on the beach.
You had a floating.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just to drive traffic and people to the concession. And it worked sometimes. Sometimes it wasn't as big of a hit, and it depended on how much effort the concessionaire put in.
Right.
I would just, and this is my own ignorance about food trucks. Now, I know in the recreation plan, one of the plans had a food truck area. Like,
Yeah.
how would you charge, say at the marina, for a certain part of the day, a food truck?
So
Like, how does that work?
This is a great question. So in the past, we have put out RFPs for food trucks to have a food truck service there for the summer.
Yeah.
They won't bid on it.
Really?
You get 0 bids.
The traffic issue.
It comes down to, it just comes down to if they can get us a private event booked and they know that they're gonna make X amount of dollars on that, that's gonna be more beneficial than them sitting there and taking a chance on paying staff to be there, on supplies that may or may not make them any money. So under the last purchasing director, when Gerald Foley was here, we put this out to bid again. It didn't work.
Okay.
So he ended up giving us the ability he said, you know what? If you could find a food truck that would like to pay you to be there for a week or for a day.
Morning, like, I'm gonna try it out for,
You can do that. So right now, like Southport Beach, we have Tasty Yoke.
Right.
Tasty Yoke, and they pay us, I believe it's $75 a week to park there. And he's consistent. He goes there. Sometimes we Staking It is another one that was sitting over on the side that was also taking advantage of that. Proof Pizza is another one that'll do Sasko Beach, and she loves to be down there on Friday and Saturday nights. And again, they do pay us that, but we're not making a lot of money off of it because again, if they got a private party, they're going to go jump at that, and that's where it's gone. So I mean. In the master plan, when they were calling for the food truck area, it would be something similar to this where we wouldn't have a concession anymore and we would try to contract with these vendors to have consistent vendors. Because again, nobody wants to go to the beach and not be able to get something. Or if you think pizza's going to be there or burgers are going to be there and then they're not there, well, now you're disappointed that you got to get tacos or whatever. But yeah, that's kind of where we see this going. Maybe not like a New Haven, off the highway, food truck area, or even Park Ave in Bridgeport near Sacred Heart. I mean, again, there's a high traffic area with a lot of college students that are, able to walk right there, and they've got that traffic a lot. So,
I don't know, for food truck vendors out there, I could see, the marina, that side of Jennings Beach, potentially being a little good place for business. All right, thank you.
Sorry.
Anybody have questions on marina revenue?
Yeah, waiting list currently?
For a large slip, it's 11 years. For everybody else, it's about 2.5.
And
we have I should also mention, we have about a 10% turnover each year. 10%. So it's about 60 boats that don't return.
So if you think you might want to boat, just get your name on the list.
yeah. And then when you rush to buy a boat, but,
Exactly.
but the other question is, having went to a lot of these meetings when you were holding the, race consulting meetings, the marina at some point is going to have to be dredged, right?
It does. It's going to need to be dredged. The basin.
You've lost some slips.
The basin itself will
Yeah.
need to be dredged.
The channel's holding up,
The
right?
channel's holding up, and that
Yeah.
should be a good 7 or 8 years. We did that in 17. So again, we're,
It's coming
holy
along.
moly, it's amazing how time flies. So yeah, it's time to start
It
looking.
didn't fly while you were.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Right.
So it will be time to start looking at that again. But the basin itself should be dredged. To my knowledge, I don't have any records of it ever being dredged since it was built in 71.
Right.
The problem with dredging that is going to be that everything that's in the basin is contaminated.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, we know that because there's boats sitting
Yeah.
there, whether they're leaking or the engines have fallen off the back by accident or just sitting at the bottom of the basin.
Right.
I mean, things like that happen. So there's going to be significant costs associated with that.
Right. But are we close to a point where some of the larger boats won't even be able to get in and out, or?
At low tide, we were. I don't
Yeah.
think we're at that point within
Okay.
the basin, but that was the argument with the channel.
With the channel.
People getting in and out is that low
Yeah,
tide, if you had one of the big sailboats, you
If
weren't.
you waited too long to come back, you were
You
screwed.
had to wait for the tide.
Yeah.
That's not the case now.
But that's not a huge issue in the basin.
Not in the basin itself at the moment. Doesn't mean it wouldn't be in 10 years. Again, the more sediment that falls off the edges or, just comes in from the channel itself, it's going to essentially fill the basin, so.
And at some point, if we have to do that, we can't do it with the docks in, right? We'd have to remove, that's a major project.
It's a major
And the
project.
cost of shipping the toxic
Yep.
materials out.
Yeah, it's a major project. And when we were looking at this in 2014, again, this is how crazy this time flies here. When we were looking at redesigning the marina in 2014, that was basically part of what we wanted to look at was if we're going to take all the docks and the pilings out, now would be the time to also dredge the basin.
Right.
Since the pilings are coming out, you go in and do that.
Right.
But obviously, we never got to that point. So
All right.
marina expenses we can talk about.
Okay.
Again, we held fairly steady here, seasonal, the regular payroll, again, is a FIA contract, there's one full-time employee here, so you see that, and then the seasonal payroll is the other driver, and again, that's due to minimum wage. All right, we'll move on to the, you guys have par 3 as the next, Carl Dickman is the next one, or does it go to Smith?
Well, on the schedule, it's Smith, so we can go to Smith first.
So Smith is on page 239, well, starts on 239, revenue's on 240. One of the greatest things that happened, as weird as this is to say, was COVID. This is like the one benefit that we have, I think, everywhere across the country has seen a bump in is golf. Prior to COVID, I was on the, oh my gosh, the sky is falling, golf is trending down. And that was the truth. Then COVID happened and we had the COVID bump, the COVID boost, whatever you want to call it. And for the most part, we've held fairly steady. We had a slight dip right after COVID, but then those numbers have held steady over the last 2 or 3 years. So it reinvigorated the golfers, or maybe the people that were commuting to work every day and then finally got back on the golf course, and now they're like, you know what, I missed this, and they're coming back out to play, and that's the important part. And we've increased our youth programming, and I think that's the other big driver to increasing golf, is getting younger golfers involved and wanting to love the game of golf. And if you can teach a kid to play golf, and then they get that lifetime long love for the game, you've got a golfer for life, which is essentially what we're trying to do. So you'll see the revenue numbers here. Overall, about a 4% increase. Smith is doing great. The one area that I would say we may be able to, if anybody's looking to bump revenue up, you're looking to change something, it could be in the driving range. What I did here is, as you guys know, we are redesigning the driving range. And I think once that's done and the top tracer is in, our revenue is going to double. And I know that, but I'm also very conservative when it comes to projecting numbers, as my track record will show. So when I go up 15,000, even it's a 10% increase, what my mind is thinking is, yes, we're going to build this at some point during the spring, because we've got the bids in, and I've got one more meeting through the RTM to get the final funding for it. But it means I'm gonna have to shut the driving range down for 2 weeks while we build this, because as soon as I get the green light, we're hitting the ground running. I'm not.
2 weeks?
It should be about a 2-week project. So I'm thinking in my mind, okay, I'm gonna lose 2 weeks worth of revenue if it's in the middle of golf season, but I'm gonna make up some more revenue because now more people are gonna be coming up there. We're gonna increase the cost, for a bucket of balls. Right now, we're charging $6, but if we throw an additional, we did the numbers on this, if we throw an additional, 20 balls in there and we up it $2, and now we're paying $8, people are getting more for their money, but they're paying more. And we do about 26,000 buckets annually up there, so not a significant amount of, it's not an insignificant amount of money that we do there.
A
But
long time coming.
it is. So yes, this budget will take effect in July. So again, I was just kind of hedging my bets. But again, if you guys were saying when you're debating this on Monday that, hey, you know what, there's an area where we need to make up some revenue, it could be this. Again, I took a very conservative approach with it. So
everyone I believe knows it's going to be heated and it'll be year round, assuming that there won't be a foot of snow, right? So.
What about the ball return part? Remember that whole, people have to wait for the person to be.
So there'll still be a guy that goes, a part-timer, a seasonal person that goes out there and collects the balls manually with the machine, but the ball machine has been automated and we've already put that into action. So that's up and running, which, again, why it's not on this one, but the current budget that we're in, you see a spike in our revenue, because again, I think that's part of it, is that
They can do it.
have the automatic machine. You don't have
Yeah,
to
it's
wait
better.
for a person to be
Wait.
at the window to give you a token to help you.
Just a credit to the pro, and just because you brought up the golf balls, I went and did a lesson with him, and he takes you to the back of the range and he says, just pick a target. So of course I aim for the net that keeps the balls in, and I hit the ball and I hit it right into the woods. He goes, you're a finance guy, right? I was like, yeah. He goes, well, I pay 50 cents a ball, so pick a target in the middle of the range.
He's actually done a lot. He's been great.
Oh, Bob is
He's
fantastic.
been great since we got him, and I think it's helped, like you're saying, increase the amount of participation.
You could see it again. I think COVID had something to do with it, but so does the new clubhouse, so does the restaurant, so does the golf pro. Those three things in conjunction have really made Smith it has that, I don't want to say it has a country club feel, but it really does in a public setting, which is unusual for a municipal golf course. But everybody.
And just getting Bob was a
Getting
big
Bob.
controversy, and policies were wrong and handled right. That took a lot of time and effort. Good Lord. It's all good now.
Any other questions on the Smith revenue before I jump to the expenses?
Just one quick thing. I think we should be asking someone to look at solar for the roof of Smith.
So they did.
'Cause I think, yeah,
They did.
yeah.
And it wasn't financially viable. So Craig Curley was the chair of the building committee when they did the building, and that was one of the, I think Bucky might have said it, but any new construction we do, or when we put a new roof on, that's one of the first things they look at is, do we have the ability to put solar on this, and does it make financial sense? And for whatever reason, I don't know if it was the angle of the building or the way the sun rises and sets there.
Okay.
It didn't make sense for that project, and honestly, like I said, Craig Curley probably remembers that conversation much better than I do, because that was a big
Okay.
push. We tried to go green, and we want to be as sustainable.
Well, I mean, that could be a money saver if it works, but I
They even talked about putting in like carports in like a separate section, like, can we make a solar field? As opposed to even, because if it didn't make
Right.
sense on the building, well, can we, and then I think they couldn't fit enough of them,
Okay.
in the area. But I know that they did an analysis on this, and it was
Okay.
definitely part of the conversation. But obviously, like I said, one of our biggest drivers in Parks and Recreation and conservation is we want to be as sustainable and green as we can. So anytime we can incorporate those types of things into our projects, we like that. We want to do that stuff.
Sometimes it just doesn't work.
That
Thank
was
you.
what we were told.
So we're going to go back now to Carl Dickman.
Carl Dickman, very similar situation to Smith, where you'll see a slight increase in the revenue, again in fees. The par 3 is probably the best deal in Fairfield County. As a resident, you pay, I believe it's $11 or $7. Again, off the top of my head, I apologize, I don't have the right number, but to go play 9 holes. And this is where you will see your seniors playing. You'll see the young golfers. You'll see, the middle school. We do all our middle school leagues down there. Our middle schools all have golf programs, and they take up tee times there, and we work with them to try to get that. This is where your beginner golfers go that are going to be intimidated by playing at Smith. Well, you can go and play at par 3, without the pressure of, somebody who plays golf every day breathing down your neck and you're taking too long. Our maintenance staff there, we have one full-timer, a foreman, John Johnson, who's been with us for a very long time, I believe since 2004, maybe even before that. He takes a lot of pride in the par 3. There's not a time where you go down there and he is not on site doing something. And he's got a great seasonal staff that helps him out. So it's just a great facility and really a nice amenity for the town of Fairfield to have. Any questions on the revenue?
And Carl Dickman loved it.
Yeah, he did. I have a picture of him in my office, very first time, very first tee shot. And the driver, again, as you've seen over and over again, really is just the seasonal payroll, which is not a lot in this budget. But minimum wage goes up, so does everything else, unfortunately. Wage compression issue. Happy to answer any questions on any of the budgets that I have. That was my last one.
Yeah. Rental of the tennis facility, where does that show up in the revenue?
That's in recreation, 7050.
Okay.
And you'll see it under tennis concession.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, that's a 20-year lease that went into effect in 2014 when we partnered with them, public-private partnership. They fronted the money to rebuild the building for us. And out of fronting that money, they got a long-term lease in the deal for 20 years. So they are under contract with us through 2034, which honestly is only, 10 years away at this point. They are a great partner.
Yeah.
I could not ask for a better partner either. This is not a vendor that I need to chase down checks from and make sure they pay their rent. They also, in this number, they also have our summer concession there, which is what used to happen was come May, they would close up shop prior to the new building and they'd move all their stuff out, and then recreation would move in just for the summer months.
Okay.
And we ran our own summer tennis programs, and then come September we'd move out and they would move back in. Well, in 2014 they decided not to give them a full year lease, so we actually have 2 leases built into this. They have a winter lease, which is the big number, and then they have a summer lease, which I want to say that is around $30,000 a summer right now that they pay, just for those summer months. But it saves everybody the hassle of moving shop, picking up, moving out, us moving in. We don't have to worry about hiring tennis staff to new staff to come on and just run things for the summer.
Also, but you still run the camps you run a camp at Ward and a camp at Ludlow, right?
Yeah, we run a lot of tennis lessons. It's not through this organization. It's not through the same.
Right. That's Parks and Rec, right?
Yep, and we use a different vendor.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's not Fairfield Indoor Tennis that does our lessons at our parks.
they don't do the vendor, they're not the vendors on the field, are they, for, the soccer fields, that little bit? Yeah, that's, okay. All right.
I have one question. For revenue for the marina, for winter storage?
Yep.
Are you at capacity there for storage for people that are,
Yeah, we are, unfortunately, and that was why I increased it, because Justin's very good about, if he can squeeze another boat in for somebody that needs it, he typically will find a spot. But we're at capacity where we are at the marina. To move across the street to Jennings, where you have a large parking lot, it's not as secure.
Right.
We've got cameras at the marina that,
We're gonna have a gate.
we will have the gate, but
well,
it may help. The other issue that we have with Jennings is, and again, knock on wood, we have not had any huge snowstorms, but Jennings parking lot is also where they dump all the snow that they take from downtown. They truck it down there and they make gigantic piles of it until it melts, sometimes not until May. The other parking lot that Justin has been eyeing is the one across the street from our building on Mill Plain, which is the commuter lot from the train station, that where we had the COVID testing.
Yep.
That lot's empty every day. And again, he's like, oh, it'd be perfect for boat storage. I'm like,
That's
I don't know.
creative, I'd never heard that before.
well, you go down Westport by the train station, there is just
Yeah.
boats stored like.
Yeah,
That would make us look more like
Water
a.
there, bud.
Yeah, people are always looking for storage, because again, especially here in Fairfield, if you live in the beach community, you don't have a huge a huge driveway, right? So you can't put it on the street, so where do you put it? So,
Has he put revenue projections together?
not for the other parking lot, but it'd be real easy for him to do, so,
We really what?
easy for him to
Okay.
put that, I mean, he just
Well,
calculates.
we're also
the thing.
looking, in the past about working with the parking authority to add a deck maybe on the main lot so that we could sell that property and add some affordable housing. And
Right, right, yeah.
There's some ideas there that would, I think, be more lucrative for the town as far as revenue goes.
But
Yeah, yeah,
could
but this would be interim.
This could be a short term.
Right, in the
Short term
end.
Season by
increase, yeah,
season.
Sewage issue.
I'm sure the neighbors would really like all those boats stacked up there. They didn't like when the testing center was there.
When the what?
You can also
Testing
just put
center.
snow
They
there.
didn't like, certainly didn't like the solar,
No, they didn't like any of
the
it.
solar. So, yeah, that
The
would.
ones right behind the
Dad
little
was
Yes, they-
spot.
from New York City.
Yeah.
They don't like the testing.
For
center.
20 years and they do snow, so we pay him, he'll.
I mean, cars and noise and exhaust, a little
Well,
bit
we put
different.
extra trees
Trees.
for that.
But you had some preliminary thoughts about using part of that parking lot for in your master plan, right? Or no?
No, I don't think the master plan called for anything in that lot.
Okay. There's,
I'm sorry.
no, in the
Train station, that
in the marina lot.
Marina lot.
Did you have some thoughts of like how you
There's
could?
definitely concepts that we did for the Ash Creek open space side of the parking lot.
Oh, not on the.
Not on the parking
Okay.
lot, so yeah, I think the parking lot itself was staying kind of in the same configuration, maybe
Okay.
striped where it made a little more sense, but, no, and obviously the other thing that Christine was making a good point, a restaurant has been the other big thing that over the years, the strategic plan in 2020 brought that up too. I mean, that was one of the things, like the big picture ideas that, hey, there's not one restaurant in Fairfield on the water, and here we are, a beach community, and we don't have one. And the marina was identified as like, we're at the end of the skate park, that area of the beach where the sail house is and the Coast Guard building. They were saying, well, this would be the perfect spot for it. A lot of thought and things would have to go into making that happen, but it's come up over the years.
Well, we talked about it, extensively, trying to do, a long-range plan, sort of like, kind of like a Captain's Cove deal, like, how they have, maybe even
Shops.
potentially using Penfield, Jenny's Pavilion as a restaurant, subbing it out or renting it out. And having like a boardwalk where you can walk to the marina, maybe even cute little shops like the Cove has. Something that's sort of a tourist attraction and more user-friendly for our community. Obviously, it would stir some interest from the area, but it's so strange that we are the only shoreline town that doesn't have a restaurant on the water. Stratford does, Westport does, all the towns do.
I think, well, Maybe just because our beaches are so embedded in residential areas, that access there and.
And also, aren't there some
Yes, because
restrictions?
There's so many parking, there's so much parking there. Some people had wanted Penfield, but it was like, my God, Penfield's right in the middle of like a really tight residential area,
The
whereas
small parking lot.
Jennings just has such a big parking lot. And it's kind of removed, it's not like dead center, with houses right next to it.
Has anyone ever looked at that area was donated by the Jennings family?
Yeah.
Are there restrictions on,
I think they've all expired at this point.
okay.
I'd have to double check, but yes, you're right, there were.
There are
there were
restrictions on what we're, yeah.
We also took some federal.
You have to give it back to the Jennings family by violating.
The skate park, is it still being used?
Still being used, and with our new programmer who came on, she's been on a year in April. We are offering, I believe it's spring, I want to say it's spring lessons and programs down there for skating, and throughout the summer. So this will be the first time since the park opened in 2009 that we are really getting programming going there, which I'm excited to see.
That's exciting. Actually, I got a really well-articulated letter from a middle schooler who I meant to talk to you about. It's just been so busy, but it was really cool. She said, Westport, we have to travel to Westport. They have such a nicer skate park, and could we do some renovations on the skate park? Has that ever been on the radar? Once you increase programming, maybe make it a little more, I don't know, like up to the standard of Westport, which I've never been to? Or...
It's all subjective.
Yeah.
Yes, there's room within the current footprint to add features that may make sense at a lower cost than
Right.
What we have there now. That's the cement. I don't think you'd want to do anything like that again, but adding different rails and things of that nature that they can do tricks off of, that can be, secured onto the concrete or to the pavement off into like where we use like for beginners that are trying to learn how to skate, like we
Right.
may be able to use that type of area.
Right.
So yes, we've looked at that. We've met with, there's a few residents that have come to us and said, hey, we really would like to see these improvements. And we try to meet with, if a resident wants to meet with us to talk through that, we want to, and then we try to see, okay, well, where does this fit within our plans and our budgets? Because obviously everything
Right.
costs money, so.
And there were some issues with, I remember seeing emails, there were some kids who were hanging out there, were a little tough and sort of bullying people and stuff like that. So that there's always that oversight issue as well, like
And-
it'll cost money.
Well, the commission decided to go to unsupervised skate park, and it's just open sunrise to sunset, like the rest of the fields and facilities, sunrise to sunset. And we haven't had any complaints since then.
Right.
Believe it or not, all the complaints we had were when there was staffing, which is
Right.
mind-blowing to me. So I don't know if it's just not being reported or
Right.
everybody's just getting along.
Yeah.
But knock on wood, again, it seems to be going pretty smooth down there at the moment, which I enjoy.
Which is good.
That's awesome.
The property at Giant Steps, the maintenance there, this is for the collective,
It's their budget.
even the part of the property that's not, because when that property it was very much, the board, it was like, you have the school and you have the parking lot, and the rest of that property is town,
The wooded area is conservation.
right?
39 acres there is conservation. The rest of it, the manicured part, the building, the school building, and the grounds, my understanding, maybe I'm speaking out of turn and I apologize.
But
I thought was Board of Education.
They're handling it now. We had said at some point we would like to consider doing something with that building that's not really, it's horrible. That cement structure, it's all dilapidated. We were gonna maybe through DPW.
And I know a lot of
there, and-
things were
Yeah, and then we were
just-
talking about, then we had a couple of reach outs from private, like sadly, a pediatric hospice center, a couple other things that would have been sort of low traffic, but would have been a sort of a boost for the town. And then a lot of that stuff just went away. We didn't get anybody else really asking. what I had always thought we should do is you maybe knock the building down and add a soccer or two field over there.
Well, I know that
The
that,
master plan called for.
Yeah, to
We
increase
had them
our
look at that
field
property,
space.
even though, because it was a school property, we said, you please look at this because we know
The
there's
fields
land.
make sense, but a lot of people don't realize a lot of it's conservation, so it's wet. So you might be able to squeeze two soccer fields in there, but obviously they have to be strategic because of the conservation areas, wetlands areas. But it's, I think, a fabulous thing. I would love to see us do that.
In the woods there, just behind the dilapidated building, there was a baseball field. And you can still see the remnants of it when you're looking at like satellite views of it. And that goes back to its prior, like 3 uses ago.
Right.
So there were fields there at one point. They've just overgrown it.
It would be a great spot, because we need the field space and
well, I know, that spot,
we talked about it.
lots of ideas of what could potentially go there. I don't know if the town or anyone has made a judgment call on whether or not the existing old building is,
It's pretty bad.
I mean, did you go in that during the tour? It's pretty,
It's dilapidated, but unless you're an engineer, you don't really know
And I-
whether.
no,
The cement
I think
structure
that
is
part of it-
strong, but I mean, fields is something we need.
I heard multiple information about whether or not the structure itself was sound or not. At first, it was like, the bones are good, something could be done with the building. And then I thought that maybe, no, the building really probably should come down. And then a fence was put around it because it was somewhat of a safety risk.
But who told, has an engineering firm ever looked at it?
And I don't know. So I think that
I think it was reviewed, but, I think it would probably be helpful for us as a board to have, an opportunity to have First Selectman share the updated capital with us, because if that's incorporated, because remember, we talked about that during.
Well, and the Board of Ed is, like, when they talk about early childhood center and things there, and central office and maintenance, and there's a lot of people have had a lot of ideas for that. The interim CFO looks like he has a comment to make, so.
Yeah, no, it's definitely something we're looking at. I brought it up, and actually am working on getting a date already, between, Mr. Papa George and Mr. Ryan on the town and board side to at least go there and then have a conversation about what our options are to assess, because I've had the same conversations come across my desk about
Sure.
the physical building or not. So first address that, because we have a fields issue, we also have a physical building issue. So if a building can be rehabbed and utilized, you may find that building another building somewhere else for all of our space demands may be an issue. It's not in the current, it's so rough that it's not in the current draft of the waterfall, but the goal was when we march towards a more comprehensive waterfall, that some of these things come to the, come to a point of more clarification where we can at least start putting some placeholders and talking to everybody kind of asks for more space or asks for more fields. There's just only so much of, so we're trying to say, what do we physically have for things, and then try to bring the parties together to move in that direction. So I would say, it's for me and them touring. I told them it would be after this round of meetings. So it's probably next week or the following
Okay.
week, go there. And you're probably, going to need at least an engineer. So, because we've heard, again, completely different, it's rehabbable, or drop it to the ground and put something else there, so.
So another couple of projects. This is a project to actually take the speculation out of it, get someone who knows what they're doing to do an actual review of whether the building is a structure that can be saved or not. Because right now, I've heard, it's all like rumor and speculation.
And the purchase of that building happened so quickly.
Yeah.
During COVID, that it was somewhat of, the priority was getting Walter Fitzgerald in the building, and, such great, our town should be so proud of all the great stuff that's happening there. But the field and the building, potentially comes with
The project.
some risk in terms of leaving it the way it is. So just want to make
Yeah.
sure that it's.
So one of the things that I tried to work through before this role coming in was, what do we, the whole landscape of everything that we have that are town buildings. It even came up recently with the RTM's review of the leased properties, trying to do a much deep dive on, just buttoning up where the leases stand, where the insurance stands on things, but then also.
Revisit the Army.
But also going to these
Visit
various
the site.
facilities and making sure that we are consistently ensuring that they're being taken care of. So that building, as an example, if it's been sitting for a few years, leaving it for another year, it may hit the tipping point, and we've learned this with others. The Army Reserve one, which has been floating around for a
20
really
years.
long time.
20 years.
But I did get.
To do something.
But some of that is the timeline on them actually handing it over, and we're getting much closer, but the issue is that they're not gonna, as I explained to me, has been that, and I think, I'm sure others have heard this, they're not gonna hand it over until they get to a certain point with a testing level within it and we're getting closer, but until we hit that point, we're. in this
Testing for
wait. I
toxic.
think it's a tox.
Yeah, for EPA
Right,
issues.
and so but that is also a major one that we're trying to see, is there anything we can do to, as a town, to then say, can we help on that? Because this has been punting around for several administrations.
Yeah,
And
it goes back to the Flato administration when I
all
started here.
levels.
I was told, hey, we're getting this.
We were really,
2 years later, we're still getting it.
we were really close. We had meetings with Himes in the building.
I remember.
We were right there, and then at the last second, the rock people were like, oh, you have to do all this stuff all over again. Like, what are you talking about? Why do we have to do it all?
Which people?
The Army, it's called rock closure, and they wanted us to do all this stuff, and we had done it all. So I want to say 6 months or a little bit more ago, we had asked Chief of Staff or Congressman Himes, who was really involved with us on that, did they just poke them, say, could you just, let's go, because they want another public comment period and all this. It's just bureaucratic nonsense. So I don't know where it stands now, but we should be at the period where the public comment that they were requiring and all this other stuff should be over, and we should be able to gain access to that building.
Yeah,
The
that's,
building needs significant work, but it should be ours. I mean, there's no reason why it shouldn't be.
Yeah, and I just bring it up, I don't want to go too far, down the rabbit hole,
Yeah.
but as we're talking about budget, if there is something that that no one currently owns, and that we should be looking, something popping up in the next year, and I know that there's other funding mechanisms for some of this stuff, but
there are some once-in-a-lifetime opportunities, and here we have two, Giant Steps Building and Army site, so.
No, it's a great property. It should be ours.
I don't have any more questions for Mr. Calabrese.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Thank you guys very much.
Thanks, Anthony, that's wonderful.
Now go put some sweat clothes on.
Finance, David? What page are we on?
98.
What time do you want to break?
We're chugging along, like, we could finish this.
You think?
Don't you think so?
I don't know.
I
I mean, you tell me.
we could wait for,
I think we're going to be talking about,
20 minutes.
Do like a 20-minute recess and then come back, or a half hour, something shorter, and just pop through it, or?
well,
do you want to break now?
sure.
Okay, we
You wanna
could,
grab lunch quick?
yeah, we could break now and then finish up.
Stretch your legs.
What time do you want to say?
Well, give me.
12:15?
Yeah, 12:15.
Yeah,
Okay.
good.
Very good?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna go to recess. Thank you.
12:15, everybody.
I mean, should we take Mark first?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Recording in
busy.
progress.
We've already put him off.
Yeah, sorry about yesterday,
Mark
Mark.
wears like 10
I'm
hats.
sorry that I was such a problem child in terms of scheduling.
We're back, I think we're back on, right? Okay. We're back in session, and we are going to skip several items and move to Mark Barnhart for Community and Economic Development,
Page 89.
page 89. Hey, Mark.
Good afternoon. Pleasure to be with you. There's not too much to report here in my budget, but I think just generally what this is kind of a microcosm of what we do. We're kind of involved in a lot of different areas. So we're working right now to establish the town's first arts and cultural district, recognized by the state. Working to complete our grant documentation for the Connecticut Challenge Program to get $3 million to upgrade sewer infrastructure around Fairfield Metro. Hopefully submitting the town's first affordable housing moratorium application later this year. So we're working on that, and moving forward with redevelopment of the former Navy housing site to hopefully address flood compliance issues as well as expand housing opportunities, and as always continue to work with our small business community to support their efforts and bring new investment into town. So the major change here outside of salary and personnel costs are in the fees and professional services. And I'd ask for some additional dollars to support the Fair Rent Commission, as that's now we're required to establish a Fair Rent Commission. We're in the process of standing that board up. And one of the things that would be helpful for their work is to do a market analysis of the rental market analysis. So they have a baseline on which then they can evaluate potential items that come before them to understand better whether or not, what is being proposed in terms of rent increases in line or inconsistent with what the market is there. So that's the most substantive change there. I think part of it is we picked up additional boards and commissions to support, not fully, we don't yet know what that's going to mean in terms of how the department is best staffed and organized. So I think this provides an opportunity for me to supplement existing staff resources with some outside contractual help as needed to get us across that until we better understand the ramifications of working with the Arts Commission, the Rent Commission, our existing affordable housing and economic development commission. So any questions?
Any questions?
So you're asking, what are you asking first?
Just a little bit more on the fees and professional services.
Right.
Yeah, and I think part of that is just, we have some ongoing needs in terms of real estate advisory services and updating our websites, but then putting aside some additional dollars for this rent market analysis, and then just having a little bit of money in the event that I need to supplement what I do in-house with some outside help. Do that. So I just don't know yet what I'm thinking. That the Fair Rent Commission is mostly going to be staffed by the town attorney's office because it's a kind of a quasi judicial thing, but we are at this point intake. So if somebody has a complaint, they start by submitting the complaint through our office. We'll do a little bit of vetting and mediation. I don't know what that's going to mean long term, but at some point we talked about this before, whether or not we need an additional staff position. I'm just not sure what that staff position is at this point.
And you've observed, have you gotten feedback from other towns that have fair rent commissions, maybe not maybe in a town similar to ours? Like, do you know if like West Hartford's?
I've looked at West Hartford specifically, and West Hartford uses a lot from the town attorney's office in terms of the actual workings of the Fair Rent Commission.
Yeah.
And part of it is it's driven by complaints. So I imagine as we get a Fair Rent Commission up to speed, there might be more awareness around it and more likelihood that we'll see some initial complaints that we then have to deal with. But over time, a lot of these groups, they fall into a rhythm where it's like maybe a couple meetings during the course of the year. I hope that's our standard template, but we just don't know yet.
Based on the number of complaints, and have you seen the volume in other, like this?
It really varies.
Right.
And I think it varies based on economic conditions too. So obviously when, there's been some issues in terms of housing costs rising, so I think, people are exercising their rights under Fair Rent Commissions more today than they were maybe a few years back, but these things have been slow. So I just don't know what that translates in terms of my work. I mean, the same holds true on the housing front. We do compliance reviews. Every time we do a project that has an affordable housing component, they're required to provide an annual compliance report to planning and zoning, but I kind of act as a sub-consultant to the planning and zoning department. Review those reports.
A lot of consultants.
And so, right now it's a manageable, I can fit that into my schedule. It definitely, there are things that I'm not able to get to. I'm not saying that, it doesn't have some impact, but we focus on the big picture, big things, and I think we're not losing a beat in terms of moving the big items forward. But, as we continue to develop more housing that does require them to provide reports, just like the fire marshal has to do inspections, I can see a point in time where we may have to have some additional staff resources devoted to these types of things. But I don't know if it's more towards the housing front or if it's somebody that helps me on the economic development business specialist line type front. So I think this is kind of a transition year. That's why I think the fees and professional services gives us a little bit of time to sort that out and figure out what the staffing implications are.
So I think
So we
Marky's
should-
being very humble. We were gonna actually put an additional staff person in his budget for this year because of the fact, as you can tell, and as you work more closely with him, he's doing everything. I mean, he is the economic development director, he works with the chamber, he works with all the businesses. He also has to go and put together the housing to pull Navy housing and talk to this one and talk to that one, and so we could buy the housing, work with Habitat, deal with the Affordable Housing Commission, deal with this new Fair Rent Commission. He deals with the Arts Commission. Like, he's kind of juggling a lot of balls, and the amount of work, let's just take the brewery, for example, the amount of work that we put in together, mostly Mark, to try to get that business off the ground was tremendous. And so, in my opinion, his office is overwhelmed. I think he's doing a lot, going to planning and zoning meetings, going here, going there. We were able to update the the full-time admin's job description so that we could have a more relevant person, where Mary Alice took over marketing skills and all of that, which I think has been extraordinarily helpful to the department. But, I mean, if you just look at his workload when he comes in here and talks about all this stuff, it's a lot. And I know that it's not, he wants to be humble and say, oh, I can handle it, it's just great over here. But it's busy. It's a busy department, and it requires a ton of work and touching businesses, talking to this one, talking to that one, dealing with the housing. I mean, affordable housing falls under the economic development department. It falls under, so many things are under this department. It just, in my opinion, I think I would personally, even on Monday, offer an ad to this department, because I think it's going to take time to develop the job description or what they need, but I think there is a very clear need for that department to have staff to move our community forward, not only in economic development, which is a huge driver for our reducing our residential tax base, but also just to deal with everything that comes that way in a professional and responsive way without, killing Mark.
Okay, I mean, I just want to say, when Mark sat down during the budget review, I said, Mark, are you going to ask for additional staff? And you said not ready to do that yet. So I agree.
And part of it is to take that time to develop a job description. I'm just not sure where that job is.
Right. I agree that the return on investment from you will justify, most likely the way you operate, it will be justified. So, like, when you're ready, we should have that conversation, and it could be even part of some reorganization, or, even before next budget season. So,
Well, I still think there's an opportunity, right? Because the budget doesn't pass till July, and then it would take time to develop. I mean, there are jobs that were included in the last budget that weren't even filled for almost a year later, because that department was working on developing who they wanted, what they wanted, posting the job, working obviously with the union, and make sure that that's all buttoned up. So it's not as if, the minute it passes, you have the person in the position. It takes time.
yeah, I agree. I'm not in the habit of forcing someone who runs a department to put, if you want to do that, I would encourage you to put that forward. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and the town has seen surpluses, so I think that I don't want to necessarily fund a position that's not going to get filled, because we're basically taxing our residents to fill that position, especially if right now the department head doesn't feel he's ready for it. But that said, absolutely, thank you for the history and your support, because his department, we've been in a lot of meetings, WPCA, appreciate so much of what you do, and in terms of growing our grant list, it's so important, affordable housing, so want to make sure you have the resources that you need. So I will be supporting your budget as presented, but if you think that there's...
Mark's thinking, why didn't I come forward?
Well, no, I thank you all for the support. I'm deeply grateful for the opportunity to work for this community. I love this community. And, I definitely see a need for additional staff support. And again, I was just not completely sure where the most burden will fall in terms of where that future unfolds in terms of our workload. Housing has been a big part of it. Hopefully, we get through this moratorium application that will take a little bit of a breather, but it's going to be an ongoing issue down the road in terms of these compliance reports. So, again, part of my thought was having somebody come on board in a contracted a contracted position to do the compliance report reviews. I put some additional dollars into this line, and seeing if that's really like a part-time job, a full-time job, what is it? Same with on the business development side. I could clearly do more with more staff. So it's not like I'm superhuman here. I do think that I've been here many years, and so I think I've gotten more efficient in terms of using my time as productively as possible. But it is at times a little overwhelming, because I've gone from one thing to the other, and it's so diverse, which I love. It's great. There's always something new and different every day, a different challenge. But there are times when it gets a little overwhelming. So I do appreciate the support of this board.
And as you mentioned, we approved a consulting group to look at tax structuring for more affordable housing. And to the extent you want to utilize, until you feel comfortable that you know exactly where you want to hire staff, you should feel comfortable coming and asking for consulting. Like, if you want to do some temporary plugging with experts, you could come with consulting ideas.
And I'm also very appreciative of the staff that I have. I could not do this if I didn't have a very capable staff. Sonia Hine. We have a community development block grant public hearing tonight, but she does all of that. I don't have to worry about it other than provide some guidance, strategic oversight. But she is very capable in that arena, and Mary Alice Limparopoulos, as our marketing coordinator, has been lights out, tremendous. She's just awesome. And again, if I didn't have capable staff, I don't know where we'd be. That makes my job.
But most of Sonia's salary is paid by that grant, right?
Sonia's entire
Whole salary.
salary and benefits are paid through. So you're only funding 2 full-time.
Right, so for example, if we were, say for example, we did make a motion to add a position on Monday, deliberation vote, I mean, you don't think you could figure out how you might utilize that position by, the fall?
Probably halfway through the year, sure.
Because the budget doesn't pass till, it doesn't go into impact until July. And then August, September, October, November, it takes time to develop who you want. I mean, you don't think that?
I think when Frank reached out and said, put your budget together if you have any staffing, I didn't have an idea, but I think over the course, probably halfway through the year, it crystallized in terms of
Then you have
what's
to
the Fair
wait.
Rent Commission, what's
Then
this?
you have to wait all the way till
Well, but
July.
what I
Next
heard
year.
is that
Not
I can come in
necessarily.
with a mid-year request. It's perhaps not as easy to do that way, but.
cumbersome.
I mean, I'm not gonna say no to putting additional resources
Yeah, I think
here.
Our thought was to give additional resource now, knowing that there are avenues through the year if necessary, where we can go to the Board of Finance. It's not that we want to consistently be doing that, but in Mark's instance, it was, I will say though, it was very clear that you need additional staff. So the adding into the fees and professional services and being flexible is something that we're looking to do, to at least say help is on the way while you develop that. And then, is it full-time, is it part-time, or some combination, but making sure that he has the resource to maximize everything.
I mean, there might be different ways, like maybe make an amendment, at least in the interim, to increase fees and professional services so that you have more, if you want flexibility to bring in some more consulting work to plug some of the holes until you figure out what headcount you add, because it sounds like from all of us that there's support to increase the headcount, so.
Well, the other thing in it is that, additional admin support is something too. It's a very small, lean office. We kind of are.
Physically as well.
Physically.
Yeah.
Small, we're kind of on our own up there.
Which we should change.
So part of it is, we're out, I'm out visiting with businesses. Mary Alice is meeting with our tourism partners. If Sonia's doing a grant review, sometimes just keeping the office available. We have drop-in visitors all the time. Just to have maybe a part-time admin person that can provide some flexible staffing.
And a more accessible space as well, probably.
Possibly, yeah. We've talked about whether or not, I certainly spend a lot of time in this building, working with planning and zoning, the building department, engineering. So, there's opportunities there where you might be able to get some shared admin services, but for the time being, we don't have that option.
Is it possible that we could, I think, listen, after working with Mark for 4 years, I think he needs a full-time person. But if you want to, I would support if this is an option of adding a part-time and continue to keep the consulting services fund for him, because it's just.
He could reallocate based on what he decides to do. I'd be
Yeah,
in favor of
I think
that.
that's a good idea. It's just such a valuable department, and I just know that with the right resources to Mark, he could even be even better if that's, I know it's hard to believe, but be better, do more. And he's got so much on him, it's just a lot.
100%. So if you want to think through that before Monday, and like what you would like, how you would like to structure it to give you some flexibility, I think we should consider that.
Yeah, we can work with him. I did also just want to note, and there's a little bit of a cleanup of how things function in the org chart on page 2. And we did line community neck on with planning and zoning, conservation, building, and some others, and was a lot of the spaces that just as far as just making sure it's laid out to people. And Mark works very closely with them.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that we're looking at doing from a space, I know this building came up in conversation yesterday or the day before, but trying to figure out this your term over here, which may also alleviate some of that department, or there's a lot of staff in this building that when sort of permitting side empties out, that there are physically people here, and that may alleviate that in some capacity. You may still ultimately need a part-time focused on, but at least the spaces would be better aligned, and there'd be staff consistently in that space. So
To cover when, just to be there as a presence when they're out of the office.
yeah,
I mean, the plan we were looking at was to move probate, which is really more of a state function.
Yeah, we're looking at that.
Rather than then having,
Yeah.
reconfiguring that space down here, because then Mark could be in this building.
Yeah,
And the probate court kind of liked it.
yeah.
nothing drastic from sort of pad shovel ready, just getting to the phase of it.
All right, thank you very much for your support.
Any questions?
Thanks, Mark.
Any other questions?
No.
Okay, thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
See you, Mark.
See you.
So next is we're going to move back to finance. David Becker, interim CFO. What page are we on, David?
Finance, we're gonna be looking at page 98. It's where the departments starts. We've got several pages of usual highlights. We'll start with the expense side, and then Frank will kick it off on the revenue side. He works with CCM and others on that component. Expense side, for the most part, there's some adjustments in the part-time area, additional dollars towards the grant coordinator, and the next one is the part-timers in there, so obviously the minimum wage adjustment, a small adjustment there, and then there's an increase in some of the salary lines due to contracts, and then in the CFO line for a position that's currently advertised, we put the top end advertised number in there to ensure that there wasn't a shortfall depending upon what range anybody comes in after me. So most other items are flat, some longevity, but pretty much on the expense side, it's just moving from year to year. Frank wants to walk through revenue.
Yeah, Frank, you want
He's
to?
best on that. He works with CCM. We talk almost daily on the projections as it came in, and get that off, please.
Yeah, so finance department has a lot of revenue line items in it, but the most notable are some of the state aid loans. What I did to kind of make it a little bit more clear and everybody know what those are, if you look on page 99 or beginning on page 99, I have, right up on the miscellaneous state aid items, I kind of group those together, and then right up on the pilot revenue that's also from the state. And so just all the state aid items are estimates that we get from CCM, they send us a schedule of all the municipalities in Connecticut and what they're getting in state aid, and I plug those numbers in. There is one number that is contributed to the current year surplus and prior year surplus in the past, and that's municipal revenue sharing aid. It's additional sales tax. So we did get it this year, but it's not a guarantee that we'll get it, and if we do get it, we don't know how much it's going to be. It's something that the state allocates out after it does some calculations at the end of the year. So it's kind of like whatever money's left over. And my colleague, my contacts at CCM said it's best not to budget that because nobody really knows what the number's gonna be. So that gets to the state aid side. Rental income is per rental agreements, and I'm answering questions on those. Most notably, in rental income miscellaneous, I think that's related to a dish lease and related to kind of some cell tower stuff. So that's on that. And then the last piece, saving the best for last, is the investment income. That is a two-pronged number or effort, I guess you could say. So we have, the town has cash for operating and capital expenses. You could start by separating it into two larger buckets. We have a sum invested with an investment advisor who manages that cash and invests it for us per the town's investment policy. And then we just have operating cash that we keep in the state insurance fund. Not state insurance fund, a short-term investment fund for the state, and then some money market and sweep account. So essentially like a checking and savings account. So if you take, the interest projections from Janney along with the interest projections on our cash, where rates are, you get to an amount of, sorry, I just lost my place where the total amount is. You get to an amount of $8.596 million. It's about a $2.6 million increase from last year. And then there is a change in market valuation that the town, if there's a change in market valuation, the town has to record that, but we're choosing not to budget it this year, and so those are the major items on the revenue, and I can answer any questions if there are any.
I'm sorry I didn't ask this when we were meeting over over the last month, but I don't recall why what changes the balance of the pilot of the payment in lieu of taxes. Do you know why that went up?
Yeah, we get projections. Frank works with CCM. The governor's version actually had an increase.
So it's really just year to year on his budget allocation,
so
we get a chunk of it.
Exactly. The
There is-
budget was favorable to us as of the current projections in a couple of areas.
There is like a write-up that I could share that CCM gives us on like the formula.
Right.
And so I believe it's formulaic, and I think it depends on how much of like property they deem as state-owned, and that number changes from year to year, and so the pilot will change from year to year.
And that's all state-owned. They don't pay something for the universities and stuff like that.
So it's, payment in lieu
of taxes.
Yeah.
It's
so
just the
there's-
state-owned property.
I could ask them. I think it would include universities.
Universities, right.
Yeah, there's a number of entities, and we can get you a write-up maybe, and some of that's recorded with.
But the amount that they give for whatever the property, it's not a formula based on acreage, or it's a formula based on acreage plus whatever they have in the pot for that year, right? So.
Well, that was part of part of its calculation, part of it's how much within the budget, right?
Right, okay.
That was an area that for many years had declined, that they've
In the last-
actually been driving.
Okay.
Or partially, you can make an argument, yes, part of it was it's within our own borders, but a lot of it had to do with the state.
It would be, someday when we have some free time, it would be interesting to compare that to.
After a few years off the boards, it was actually, when I got back under the hood more, it was nice to see
Yeah.
the other direction, because we had been for many years.
It's a question we get a lot, which is, do the what sort of taxes do the universities pay? I always get that question. The answer is none.
Yeah,
but there is some income, but it would be interesting at some point to see.
And it's not as near. I mean, your clearest cut example would be GE came off the rolls.
And that's a couple million bucks.
The last time we had mill rate grand list growth, the 1 year we went negative is when they came off. And if you were to actually look at the dollars for that, no, we didn't get as much, nor have we ever made up for it. So it's not that, but it is factored in, and there is we're getting some amount of dollars back, and they've been in more recent years with budgets up at the State House. It's at least been a better picture for us.
It would be interesting to see the calculation, and we can compare to just so we can answer these questions,
Yeah.
which come up all the time.
Yeah, we'll quantify some of those properties out and get that for you.
Okay.
And if there's been change in terms of property acquired by the university, over year to year, because that's gonna.
That's the other, that's part of what we hear all the time is, they're buying everything up and what's the impact and, some of it's offset by this.
That has been somewhat of a talking point. What is the town doing to potentially limit that a
We'll
little?
talk a little bit about the investment income.
Yeah.
Where are we, what line is that on? Because it went up.
It's gonna be on page 101 and
440.
44001.
5 up from the bottom, and then the to market.
Right,
so- 8.5.
Right below it.
Right, the jump on the interest income, I think we're 43.49%. So, just to give a little background on this, before I came in, the former CFO was sort of like just investing it himself at a very low rate. There's a lot of rules regarding municipal investment. You have to be very careful. But then Jared had reached out to Janney and worked with them, and we actually had that was a huge help to the town budget, because before the town never did that. So it helped us deliver more services because of that investment income, which was such a high number. But at the time, because it was new and we want to be very careful with, relying on it, we used a lower number than the Board of Finance tried to take a higher number and ended up doing that. I just think that's a big, that's a lot of reliance, and I'm a little concerned it might be too much reliance.
I think the math is really simple on this, and it's very, very clear. It's not like we invest in things that there is this is short-term treasury. So we've been through this with a fine-tooth comb, and we feel comfortable with it.
And again, things.
And the math was clear last year too. That's why the Board of Finance, the experts on the Board of Finance thought it should have been higher. But.
No, things that didn't really used to exist as a large line that now do. One of the first things again coming in, we started. I personally started looking at this. We've had the meetings. We met with Janney. We've walked through a whole series of calculations, looked at how the numbers were built last year. Yes, also looking at what the Board of Finance's take on it was. We believe that this number is also interest rate protected, largely for the eventual decline that we're going to see in the rates. To some degree, when we see rates, we don't anticipate rates going all the way down to where they were before. If they did, that was part of why they didn't even rates it. Even if you actively managed this fund within the types of investments we're even allowed to be within, if rates were back down to near or just above zero, we probably would see the number near plummet anyways. But it will take several years of stepping down, because this is the largest portion of it is on a rolling schedule. So it doesn't immediately all come due at once. Some of it is directly in, as Frank mentioned, is sitting in money market sweep accounts, so that will step
I'm
down over
aware,
time.
you never know what's gonna happen with the market.
Yeah.
To rely on it so heavily, yes, they're numbers and but they are investments, right? And numbers change, investment numbers change.
Well, I would ask you, what sort of sensitivity to interest rates do you see?
No, I just remember the discussion over the last couple of years being, very, just very cautious, like, okay, we're gonna use the money, but let's not go hog wild on it, because we don't know what the fluctuation may be.
What sort of duration of investments, should we be in your opinion?
No, not about the.
Or what's the sensitivity?
The income
what sort of sensitivity to interest rate changes would you like us to use?
No, I just feel that relying, jumping it from.
I mean, but there's math behind it, so.
No, I know,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's also based on we don't know what the investment will change, how it will change.
Well, there are parameters within interest rate shocks,
Correct.
so if you shock interest rates,
So
like
are
what sort of
we are
sensitivities
definitely
would you like to
guaranteed that
see?
we're gonna get this amount. So we went from 382 and now we're relying on 500.
Well, if the US government goes bankrupt, yeah, we'll definitely lose some of our money.
No, these are also in.
You know what the average duration is, Brenda? What would you like us, how would you like us to?
I'm not saying how. What I'm saying is that when I was in office, I was advised by Danny and people who are way smarter than me on these subject matters to proceed with caution about relying too heavily on this funding, which is a new thing over the last couple of years. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
not
I
pretending
mean.
to be a
Well, yeah,
sentiment
but-
person. I'm
so
not.
We do
You're supposed to
kind of-
listen to people who know more than you.
Yeah, and so, and the people on the Board of Finance, actually, some of them are investment professionals. They
Okay.
thought you were really, it was sort of incorporated, sort
Well, it's
of,
so very new too.
Yeah.
The town never
but it's
did
not
that.
it's not new to us, it's not new to me, it's not new to people.
No, to our budgeting process.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
And then I also want to ask about the truing up of the internal service fund, the health. So using a one-time food source.
That would be part of, unless that's part of the active employee benefits.
We're gonna move out of finance.
So-
Well, I mean, we're talking all about money. I was just wondering, because I know we're doing $1 million, so could that potentially create a cliff in next year's budget?
So we looked at that, and the Board of Finance is intending on, over the course of this year, putting a policy in place. The discussion, so far is that any baseline number that they come up with will actually still be far lower than what that $1 million reduction was. So we believe that that was actually a conservative step down. One of the differences in the past where we ran eventually into deficits, both accrued and then eventually cash basis, we were actually at the time, the town, not we, any of us in this room, but the town at that point, and that it was not actually budgeting true to their numbers and the lines that build that up. What we have found is that we are now, all of us, through your administration, this administration, more recently, are budgeting much more trued up to it, and therefore actually, even if anything, actually budgeting slightly aggressive to it, which then causes the buildup in the excess. Well, the buildup in the excess, actually.
Right,
So the
okay.
idea was to draw down 1 million in the account, but only 1 million, and then let that settle over the course of this year, and then let them put a policy in place. If their policy guides towards a further reduction in a baseline, they can address it. They believe that that's the new baseline, leave it there. So early on, even we had discussed, could it have been 2 million or 2.5 million? And we settled that absent of a full policy, really just staying very conservative in that drawdown to the 1 million mark.
Is there any
was-
concern about creating a cliff next year?
Not at all. All of these lines are really trued up to, trued up to sort of what the experience has been. So we're much, again, compared it to years past, because that was, again, it was something that we all experienced.
Right, okay.
In the RTM back when he was in.
At that point, I think, wasn't Board of Ed still, it was Board of Ed and town in that internal service fund, and there was kind of
Yes.
further complicated the budgeting for it, if
Timing.
memory serves, so.
There is still technically a Board of Ed piece in there,
For the,
workers' comp.
But yeah, the other component has been shifted out, which was a market change for us, 'cause a lot of employees over there.
Service?
Yeah, debt service.
Well, I've actually asked you, though, using the 1.1 million debt service reserve to reduce the debt service line?
Yeah, it reduces it in line with debt service this year.
So 1.1 million debt service reserve to reduce debt service line. This could create another cliff. That reserve may not be there in 2026. Help pay that debt service.
So what we're projecting, so there was an $8 million surplus in the prior
Yeah.
year. We're projecting a $9.3 million surplus as of right now in the
Right.
current year. So, roughly, that puts us at 17 million, or so. It's actually, about 17.2 if you, and it goes down to 16.2 if you take this 1.1 million out. So the goal with that money, one of the things that we'd like to see, and that it lives in the debt service account, is for it to use it as more of a large portion of it as more of a sort of debt service stabilization. So it may turn, you've heard in a couple of things, including the state of town, maybe a sinking fund, some other things, but the goal is, and obviously we've all seen the waterfall schedule. There's a significant amount of projects that may start to get done over the next few years. If we can, in similar fashion, help that step in increase in the debt service funding, very small, deliberate drawdowns of a portion and only a portion of that. So this year there was an increase in the debt service line, and the idea was to introduce that concept and draw only 1.1. We did not want to go below the prior number at all, creating a cliff. We're projecting, we don't know exactly what next year's number is, but it'll be in that range again, and there is obviously, therefore there's going to be roughly 16 million sitting in the account. So
Well, I don't know, it's gonna sit there, you're gonna use it.
a portion, the goal would be there may be small portions of it, but the hope is to keep a substantial amount in there. So it should be roughly in the 15 to 16 million, even if some of it's used for any reorg or other smaller items.
And we're keeping fund balance level. Frank, what are we doing?
Fund balance, there's last year a budgeted contribution, a surplus was added. That's not in here, but the fund balance would be, I think, with part of the 22, the surplus, and this year's surplus, you could keep fund balance at the do no harm level.
At the do no harm? How much is it gonna take out of surplus to do that?
I'm just gonna assume, because last year the 1.225 million was the number that we had, so just assuming that grows a little bit, maybe like 1.5 million.
Thank you.
Next budget would be contingency on page 95. If you want to move there.
Yeah, these are just, I can speak broadly, and if there's any desire about like specific rate increases, traditionally those went into executive session, but there's two things in this contingency. One thing is reserve for salary increases with some of our outstanding contract negotiations. And a very small portion is due to what I mentioned yesterday with the registrar of voters. If there is a primary, the money is earmarked to go to the registrar of voters for the staffing that they've said they needed for a primary. If there is no primary, it could sit in this contingency account and be allocated other ways if so desired, or fall to surplus.
Next up is going to be unemployment compensation, page 130, details on 131.
This number is just I don't believe I changed it.
Yeah, it remains correct.
Just looks at kind of trend in actuals, and it looks like we've been trending on the downward slope. So it just looks at actuals, and I think it's an appropriate number for it.
And on this, then go to 79 and then 81. So 79 will be for retiree benefits, just see the details on page 80.
So this year, these are every year from our actuary, we get a actuarially determined contribution for other post-employment benefits and pension. And so the other post-employment benefits that are in this budget are actuarially determined, and I asked the actuary to split it amongst our three funds that are in this budget, so between the General Fund, Water Pollution Control Authority, ECC. And I break that detail out in the other post-employments part on page 79. Pension is still a number. There's a 9% increase in there. That's a placeholder. We're just waiting on working with the actuary on some final things for pension, but we believe that placeholder is appropriate. I wouldn't expect it to go down once we get our final up when we get our final numbers. If anything, it may trend down a little bit, but that's a good placeholder for where we are.
We're good there. The next one would be active employee health benefits. That's 81, but the details are on 82 and 83.
So on page 82, I give kind of the calculation sheet that I use to allocate these costs. There's multiple factors. I would say three. One is our estimates from our health insurance consultants who we use as Aon. They give me a projection based on data for essentially the prior year on what they expect claims to be. And then I make adjustments for employee contributions per the contract, and I get to a bottom line number net of those contributions. And then that gets allocated amongst all the funds. The only thing I add that Aon doesn't include in their projection are HSA employer contributions. So those are health saving account contributions from the town to one bargaining unit that's on a health savings account type of plan. And then out-of-plan stipends, those are the town and many of its contracts has stipends for those that elect not to have health insurance, and so we pay them out, but it's all out of this fund. So mechanically, the way it works is this money gets transferred into the internal service fund, and then claims are paid out of there. Going to what Brenda had mentioned about the offset from the internal service fund, it's just reflected in here as a negative expenditure. So it just offsets the total amount that we're contributing to the internal service fund. So there's a decrease of about 12%. It's not all related to the internal service fund transfer. There was also, there are a few things between when we project in April and when the town sets its budget and when we renew, the amounts are a little bit different. And the assumptions change. So last year, as part of our assumptions, we thought that we were going to have these, they're called lasers. There was discussion about it, but essentially lasers are cutouts in your stop loss insurance for high claimants. So if there's claimants that have a lot of claims, then they'll say these people, instead of having a $150,000 deductible, you're going to have a $450,000 deductible. So we were expecting that for 3 people. Which created, an increase in our estimate of about 600,000. Yeah, and
That was a bad day.
yeah, yeah. Well, I found out.
What happened to the concept of insurance?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I found out last year, I think it was the morning before this meeting.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's lovely.
Yeah. But we did go out to bid for our stop loss, and I have to give kudos to the benefits manager. She's very great and very proactive about this kind of stuff. And actually, the reason why we knew about this was because we were looking at, we went out to bid just for our health insurance anyway for the people that administer the plan. So we were able to get this off of our stop. We were able to get that off. So we had savings there. And then just administratively, there were some retirees under 65 that were still being counted in the active population. So once again, benefits manager, very proactive in cleaning that up. And so those people also came off of that active population. So that's also contributing to some of the decrease here. So $1 million in the internal service fund and about 500,000 from some of these other sources.
Great job.
Yeah.
Since Milliman, when we changed over, it really brought a lot of stuff out. And she really combed through it. She's a smart girl.
Yeah, her name is Megan Brandt.
Megan.
Megan deserves.
Isn't she amazing?
She's amazing.
She's really
I
good.
mean, it's a good team.
Smart.
Yeah.
Hardworking. She's really good. We're all good in there. Really good.
Yeah.
that is the last of the items. We had community ec on already, so that's agenda item.
Is there anyone on that would like to make public comment? I am not seeing anything, so any public comment? Raise your hand or? Okay, I'm not seeing any public comment, so I believe we're done. This has been great. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you, Christine. Thanks to Frank. You are awesome. David, awesome.
Yes.
And it's been a great process.
Yep. Thank you to all the department heads and everybody, school staff for presenting to us.
And Monday will be, 4 o'clock on Monday. Yeah, so again, reiterate, Monday at 4 o'clock, we're going to be deliberating and voting on the Board of Selectmen recommended budget. Hope to see people here. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, we're adjourned.
All right, everybody.
Thank you.